I'll switch over them all. I'll let you ask about Deshaun. And just quickly, can you tell us about Burrow and the calf? He seemed mitigated. He was tentative, but he got the job done.
Yeah, he gets the job done, but how sloppy did that look? I mean, I was watching it last night. You sit there and you're just like, how many times are you used to seeing someone run press man against the Bengals and the Bengals not generate a big play, right? I think it's like you've got to put that to lack of reps. Simultaneously, when you've got a guy like Joe Burrow who's been successful in this league, you'd expect it to be one of those things where it's like, hey, we know you haven't had the reps, but we expect you to kind of come in here and be able to deliver in those situations. So to me, they got the job done. I think they were aided by a couple of calls there at the end, but I do think, they get it done. But I think Burrow's going to have to make people pay when they come up there and they run press man, or it's just people are going to try to get after him because of the injury, and they're going to try to heat him up. And that's exactly what the Rams did last night, and I think we'll see more of it.
Tim, Deshaun Watson on Sunday was outstanding, 27 for 33 for 289, 2 touchdowns. What type of Deshaun Watson could we and should we expect going forward? Can we get the one that we saw in Houston, or is this a player that we're going to potentially see more of what we saw last year and in the early weeks so far this year?
That's such a great question. I mean, to be honest, that's the highest graded he's been for anyone who knows what they're looking at since he's been a Cleveland Brown, right? I think that was the first game where you started to see that big contract. I think the reality is he needs to do that one more time before I'd come on here and be like, man, I think it's here to stay. I do think the way that offense is built now without Chubb, where they're going to run more RPOs, they're going to put stuff in his hand on early down and distance with like quick game. Hey, just let's get our feet moving forward. Let's read this thing out. Let's read this backer. Let's go ahead and play easier football. I think that's what we saw from him in Houston, where it was RPO heavy, and then eventually they got into some shot plays, some downfield completion. So I do think where they're now forced to go because they don't have Nick Chubb could be advantageous for Deshaun and how he's playing just from a quarterbacking perspective. Now, I don't know if it helps you. I know they won this last weekend, but I don't know if it helps you as a team, right, not having Nick Chubb. But I do think from a quarterbacking perspective, it may force them into play-calling situations that are kind of more advantageous for Deshaun.
Tim Jenkins, quarterback guru trainer at T Jenkins Elite on Twitter. So the favorite in the market right now, Tim, to win a championship over at DraftKings are the 49ers. You recently broke down how Brock Purdy dominated the Giants. Can that continue throughout the rest of the season? Like, what you see from Purdy, is it sustainable?
Well, I mean, it's sustainable because it's not that tough, right? And I'm not trying to act like I could do it because I got cut a long time ago, right, 10 years ago, so I'm not acting like I could show up and do it. But the reality is the way they set up and scheme the stuff for the quarterback, man, it's a dream for a quarterback. And I think you're seeing Brock is executing it. What I will say is I don't know how – I get it, right? Hey, the Niners are a strong team, but I don't know how you watch this Dolphins offense and you don't throw a little flyer out on them, because I just think Tua, with how he's playing with anticipation, with how he's just being a point guard and facilitating it to these playmakers, I'm in Colorado, right? So everyone here is like hair on fire. The world's ending. They just gave up 70 points. And like as an offensive guy, man, it was fun to watch, right? I just think like Tua is playing at such a high level. To me, it's like if I'm looking at those future bets, man, I think the Dolphins are a team that will surprise some people. I do think people are still waiting for that Bills game, right? They're waiting for the test, right? Hey, they're going to go play Buffalo, and that's their real test in division. But I don't see anybody slowing these dudes down.
Tim, you mentioned you're in Colorado. The Bears take on the Broncos this week. Russell Wilson throws for 300 yards in his last 2 games. First of all, tell me how you assess Russell Wilson. Then the second question I have for you is a little bit more off the field. What has the atmosphere in Denver and surrounding areas been like with Russell Wilson staying in a game where they're absolutely getting drubbed? I mean, this is a Super Bowl winner, in my opinion, a guy who's going to wind up in Canton at some point in time. You generally don't leave a quarterback out there to dry in those situations.
So Russ is back. I know people hate seeing that. They're like, they just got beat 70-20, but the dude played a solid game. I think he's 3 games in. I think you kind of have to say, okay, Russell Wilson is back to who we thought they were getting when they traded for him, right? I think that's where they're at with that. From the standpoint of leaving your franchise quarterback in there when you're down 50, I don't know if that's Sean Payton's way of saying to this locker room, like, we are going to compete no matter what. You're going to stay in there and compete no matter who you are. Simultaneously, it's like, okay, so you're going to trot a guy out there, right, who's going to make $200-something million or whatever Russ's contract is, and it's your way of saying, hey, we're competing no matter what. How about we compete by letting go of someone who's clearly taken a great defense and ran them into the ground, right? That's the reality. I hate, like, being the guy who's like, oh, this guy needs to be fired, because we've all had bad days at our job. But, like, none of us were sitting here saying, you know what, I think the Broncos defense is going to suck this year. Like, that was none of us going into the year, right? The question was Russell going to turn it around? Not, was Russell going to turn it around, play 3 great games, and then the defense give up 35 to Sam Howell, 70 to Tua? Like, that wasn't the narrative. So to me, it's like, you can be that kind of guy, right? Like the Bill Belichick type of, we're going to keep you in there and we're going to compete. But then you also have to hold your staff accountable. And I have a hard time believing that someone who's given up the amount of points they've given up so far really belongs in the position he's in, if that's really like the kind of culture you're setting of, we all compete, we all do this. I don't know, man. I think it's a tough situation right now. If I'm a player in that building, I don't get how you run our quarterback out there and then simultaneously Vance Joseph is still calling the defense.
Tim, you got excited when you talked about McDaniels' offense. Shanahan Tree now running his own offense and team in Miami. You got a minute and a half. Tell us what's so exciting from an offensive mind like yourself watching McDaniels' offense.
It's exciting. I don't know if you guys heard the interview where he's like, I try to take what has been previous, like, standard and change it, right? And he does little things where it's like, you know, we boot, right? And traditionally when you boot, you have like an ultra high that runs towards the boot, like a corner route that runs towards the boot. Well, he's the kind of guy that'll sell the ultra high, and then guess what? Boom, we're going back to the post, and now our guy's going to boot, he'll flip back, and Tua will throw it back. It's like these little wrinkles that he has that make a D coordinator and defenses adjust to it, right? Like corners will always jump that ultra high. Well, now they can against the Dolphins. And that's why you saw the first touchdown of the game, right? What happened? They lost track of Tyreek Hill. You sit there and you go, how the heck do you lose track of Tyreek Hill? But simultaneously, they're also doing RPO. They're trying to hit the bang eights after. These guys jump the coverage, and then next thing you know, he's wide open. So to me, it's like, he is so much fun to watch. He does things that aren't traditional, but it's why these guys are so open. And to me, it's like, I don't know if they're built to win the Super Bowl, but they're the team that I want to see, right? I want to be jumping on here in January with you guys, talking about these guys going and making a run, because they are so much fun to watch offensively.
And speed kills. Miami's got a boatload of speed. Don't wait till January. We'll talk to you next week. Tim Jenkins, quarterback trainer, Jenkins Elite. We'll talk to you next week, Tim. Thank you very much.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.